Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We're going to talk about this brutal Cowboys loss, what played into it on defense, offense, why I think there's some major identity issues, and a George Pickens problem. All here and more on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Steelers fans, that was a rough one. If you stayed up that late and you saw that loss, it was brutal. Giving up a touchdown with 20 seconds to go. I think on a 4th and goal, you had everything right in front of you, and it didn't work in your favor. Rough loss for the Steelers. They fall to 3-2 after the 2017 loss to the Dallas Cowboys. Now, as I said in my post-game, quick minute recap that I posted on our YouTube Shorts, Instagram, and TikTok, there's so many different directions you could point to about this game. The defense giving up 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns, the offense hanging the defense out to dry for a long time. We'll get into all of those different angles, but I want to start with something on the defense because talking to guys after the game, trying to assess where things were, couldn't get pressure late in the game, all this, that, and the third. But one thing that struck out to me again was yet again miscommunications in the secondary leading to touchdowns. Now, both the touchdowns DeShon Elliott put on himself in this game. And if you recall last week, they lost because they gave up 2 touchdowns and in busted coverage situations. Now, I will say this about DeShon Elliott. The first touchdown, I think he just got beat. I think he got pushed a little bit, and it wasn't anything that should have been flagged. But he slipped, fell, guy got open. That happens in an unfortunate moment. But the second touchdown, I am not all that certain was on DeShon Elliott. Looking at the structure of the play, the Steelers were guarding against crossing routes, and Beanie Bishop was coming from the right side of the formation. And he passed off his crossing man to Minkah Fitzpatrick, who was right on that guy because he was on the other side of the field and was perfectly executed there. But then in turn, he was supposed to take the other crossing guy, Turbin, who caught the game-winning touchdown for the Cowboys. Tolbert, caught the game-winning touchdown for the Cowboys. He was at least supposed to stay in front of him and give DeShon Elliott more time to go there to help him. And DeShon Elliott ends up having to come from the other side of the field to try to stop him. I do think that was the miscommunication breakdown, and there were several miscommunication breakdowns, I thought, with Beanie Bishop right in the thick of all of it. And that's an issue. And the Steelers defense is supposed to be a unit that's supposed to be together and on point. And listen, this wasn't even a bad game for the defense, in my opinion. They gave up two touchdowns, but this was the 12th ranked scoring offense in the NFL. You held them to 20 points. You got 3 turnovers. And the reason I think that they gave up those 2 touchdowns late in the fourth quarter, in the last 10 minutes of play, is because they were out in the field a lot. This was a game where the Steelers offense came out, had a nice initial drive of 11 plays to get a field goal, but then after that, punt after 5 plays, punt after 3 plays, punt after 9 plays, nothing at the end of the half. 3 plays, not 9 yards. Did get a touchdown to open the half, but then punt on 4 plays and punt on 3 plays. The Steelers offense, I think, hung this team out to dry a little bit. And when you go, 3 of 12 on third downs, you're going to force your defense to go back out there and try again and again and again. But we'll get to that in a second. I want you to listen to Minkah Fitzpatrick here because I think he paints a pretty clear picture of what the issue is with the communication and maybe with what the defense is trying to do schematically. Here's Minkah Fitzpatrick in the Steelers locker room after the game.
Towards the end of the game, they were running the ball well. We're allowing them to get a lot of yards after catch. Miscommunication, just all the stuff that usually we do at a high level. We didn't do it at a high level tonight.
What was going wrong on third down tonight?
First half was miscommunication. There was a couple of times where we're playing check ball and a couple of guys are playing different games. People just not in the right spots. Second half, I'm not really sure. Yeah.
Minkah, how do you guys clean that up? Seemed like that was also an issue last week late against the Colts.
I think we just got to play simple defense. You know what I'm saying? We got a lot of talent in the secondary, a lot of guys that could, play man, play zone. We just got to make a play call, simplify it, and play fast, allow us to play fast.
How concerning is it that there's still these communication issues, and Mike T called it a lack of connectivity on defense in the first half? You guys have been through 4 or 5 games now that these are still coming out.
I don't think it's too high of a concern. I think it's easy fixes. I think we just kind of overemphasize it during the week. We got to practice with crowd noise the entire week. We got to make sure everybody knows what they're doing. We got to make sure everybody's on the same page. It's a new secondary. We got a lot of new faces, younger faces. And, we might not have that chemistry that we had in the past, but it's definitely something that we can work on.
New faces, younger faces, might not have that chemistry. Simplify the defense so that the guys can play faster. All that screams to me is that, like, hey, we got the talent. We're just trying to do too much right now. And listen, this has been a big part of what the Steelers defense, for the past few years has been really good at when it's been at its best, is that it calls complicated zone defenses that catch quarterbacks off guard because they don't know where guys are coming from and they're disguising different coverages, and it forces, quarterbacks into mistakes. And it did a few times in this game, and that was good for them. But I think Minkah Fitzpatrick's point is like, look, we can do that, but our guys aren't sticking to the coverages and they're giving up these plays, and it's leading to more problems. And I think Beanie Bishop's one of those players. I wonder if Patrick Queen's one of those players. I have a hard time assessing Patrick Queen. He's not making the big plays, but like in this game, he had 9 tackles, but he didn't make any splash plays. I didn't see him really, at the key points of the game. And I haven't done an all 22 review or anything. I was at the game in the press box, and I'm still here recording at 4 a.m. right now. But looking at how the defense played at times, and I see these breakdowns. I think Minkah Fitzpatrick's point is like, look, the guy, they're working right now with a slot cornerback who I think gets lost a little bit. There are other guys in this picture that are, a little bit late on things. Maybe they do need to simplify everything down. Maybe they need an experienced slot guy. Maybe that's why they can't wait to get Cam Sutton back in about a month or two. Maybe Terrell Edmonds, who was signed, needs to go to that position, but they need something there. And that's something that could play out throughout the rest of the season if they don't, shore it up with what their problems are right now as far as their coverage breakdowns, because you do that, then you can't be a great defense. And I think that was certainly a problem that they faced in this game. But again, that problem was exacerbated because, they had some coverage problems, but you know what? This defense still got you 3 turnovers and a blocked field goal. And in Mike Tomlin, I looked this up, in Mike Tomlin's tenure with the Pittsburgh Steelers, they have gotten 3 turnovers 57 times with this game now included. And they've won 50 of those 57 games. And the times they don't, it's because they don't score enough points. I think there was only one game where they scored more than 20 points, and it was 23 points. And to me, I look at that and I think, man, this offense had several opportunities to give the Steelers a lead, a serious lead to protect. Not a 1-score lead, but get out in front, get them an advantage and put the Cowboys on the ropes. And it never did that. It did come through late with a touchdown with about 5:32 left, or 5 minutes left, or no, 4:56 left, with about just under 5 minutes left. But it did so after it had kind of put the defense behind the 8 ball all game, and then was obviously gassed at the end of the game. And part of the defense being gassed also wasn't purely just on the offense. Defense also dealing with their fair share of injuries, especially at the edge rusher position, where TJ Watt definitely was gassed at the end of the game because Alex Highsmith's already out, Nick Herbig went out, and DeMarvin Leal went out. Your second, third, and fourth edge rushers were out of the game. You had Jeremiah Moon and TJ Watt, and they could not come off the field because they were your only 2 left in this game. So lots of concerns there for sure if you're the Steelers. But I think an even bigger problem, because like Minkah Fitzpatrick said, he's like, hey, we'll work on this in practice. We'll get this fixed. I don't think that that's a lingering issue that will define the season. But what could define the season is if this offense continues to play at the level that it did in this game and from the first half in the last game. We saw in the second half of the Colts game, they started to pick it up. Thought maybe they could carry it over to this game. They didn't. This continues to be an offense that sputters. I want to talk about what's going wrong there and why I think a lot of it has to do with who they are trying to be and what they're not doing to get there. We'll do that. We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs is the number one place for you to go if you have a small business and you're looking to hire a quality professional. Why? Because LinkedIn's the place that people go to find jobs. LinkedIn isn't just a job board, though. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to fit the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional with LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats today and might not have the time or resources to hire. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode is also sponsored by BetterHelp Therapy Online. Halloween lets us have fun with what scares us. But what about those fears that don't involve zombies or ghosts or covering football games that are 8:20 kickoffs after lightning delays? That's pretty terrifying. Therapy is a great tool to face your fears, though, and finding ways to overcome them, because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing your fears in the first place and holding yourself back. Therapy has helped me realize in my life that I had blocked things out of my mind because I just didn't want to deal with them. And I had to tackle them head on to remove those obstacles that I didn't even know were there. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp knows life can be busy and stressful, so it's designed to be suitable for your stress, for your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue today's show. I wanted to talk more about the offense because I spent time on the defense there because I thought it was interesting to talk about, the game-ending play and then how it relates to communication. But I think that's very fixable. And like Minkah Fitzpatrick said, we still don't know if this offense can be fixed or will be fixed this anytime this season because this offense is so inconsistent and it continues to be a problem. You look at this game, for example, people talking about how the Cowboys ran all over the Steelers. They averaged 3.5 yards per carry, just like the Steelers averaged 3.5 yards per carry in this game. But to me, the problem is that there's nothing consistent the Steelers can still do. And there's been times in these first five games, and again, it's just been 5 games. They deserve time to figure it out. I'm not pitting all of this on Arthur Smith. But there's been times where you think, oh, maybe they do this well. Oh, maybe they do that well. But the problem is they haven't done anything specifically consistently well. They haven't run the ball on power consistently well. They haven't run counter trays consistently well. They haven't, been able to throw over the middle consistently well, run play action consistently well, hit guys out of the slants. There's got to be, something to them that is their calling card that says, hey, we do this better than anyone, or at least as good as anyone out there. And if we do that, when we do this, we can dictate the pace of play with our offensive style of play. So that to me is what I call an identity. It's something the Steelers have talked about having, not just this year, but last year was something we talked about when we talked to Najee Harris, Kenny Pickett, and guys in the locker room in late November, and they were saying they were still searching for that identity. And to me, that was supposed to be the thing that wasn't supposed to be happening in this offense. With Arthur Smith, with the investments on the offensive line, this group was supposed to be about being physical, tiring you out, wearing you down, making big plays when they were there, but using that to your advantage. And the Steelers, against a team that they're supposed to be able to run the ball against, didn't do that in this game. And in fact, they tried to move the ball through the air. And I also think the Steelers weren't, aggressive, but they did call some early shots on some deep shots on first down a lot earlier in some drives in this game. They just didn't connect on them. Like, for example, Justin Fields floating the ball up to Connor Hayward down the sideline, and Connor Hayward just can't haul it in. If he hauls it in, it's a huge play. Maybe it changes the entire tone of the game. And I think that's part of what the Steelers, tried to hit there. But I also think that a lot of what's happening with the offense right now is they just haven't figured out, the things that they can trust. That, like, hey, if we call this play, we're getting 8 yards, or we call this play, we're getting that matchup that we really, really like, and we'll trust, our quarterback to make that throw in that situation. And I think that that's something that the Steelers need to find sooner rather than later, or maybe not if you talk to Justin Fields. Now, I want to preface this. There's one question I asked about Justin Fields about what's going on in third downs. He gives a good answer there. And then I wanted to ask about the identity question and just say, hey, do you guys feel like you just still know who you're supposed to be? And then Brooke Pryor of ESPN asked a really good follow-up. It's like, okay, well, what is that identity? And just giving him the floor to say who they want to be. And then he kind of gives an odd response here about identity and why do they need to have an identity and this, that, and the third. Here's Justin Fields at the Steelers podium after the game.
What are the issues stemming that you guys see on third down as far as, execution or opportunities? Is it kind of different things, or is there a central thing that you guys aren't pulling together in those moments?
Yeah, penalties make it hard, especially when you're in third and man, third and short. We get those penalties, make it, third and 10 or third and long or whatever it is. Of course, that's going to make it harder. That's it. There was one third down where O-line protected well. I got snapped, and the ball was with the Cowboys. So, that's on nobody with me today. So, but I think the recurring thing is, just shooting ourselves in the foot. These false starts and stuff like that, and just that execution.
Justin, do you feel like this offense knows what its identity is or has its identity right now, or do you think that's still forming?
No, I think we have our identity.
What is that identity?
What are the identity options of football? I've never heard of a team having an identity. I think we have an identity. I just don't know, what it is. Like, I've never heard of necessarily an option for, an identity. I think we ran the ball well today. Like I said, I think we just missed shots and shot ourselves in the foot again. So, I don't think, we're one of those teams looking for our identity. I think we know who we are. We're a team that predicates on, running the football and staying on schedule on first and second down and then executing on third down, but we just didn't, job done. So I don't know the word to, necessarily label the identity, but those are some, intangible characteristics of, who we are as an offense.
So a lot of that there, I think Justin Fields was just frustrated in the moment, talking about that. He knows what an offense is supposed to have an identity. He's talked about identities of this offense. I think that was a little bit of frustration coming out from Justin after what was a hard-fought game and a tough loss, and definitely a frustrating loss when you look at the lack of production. And I think he also has a very good point about the penalties. The Steelers, having false starts and other issues and things holding them back in this game. They need to be cleaner. And I also think that applies to how they play. You saw a sack given up because Isaac Seumalo got trucked in the hole, and he's supposed to be back and supposed to be a stalwart figure for this offensive line. You look at how, the Steelers' run game really still didn't take hold. I know he was talking positively about it there, but at the end of the day, I don't think that the run game was doing all that, in this game. Now, I will say in key situations, they came up with it, because in this game, they were 3 of 12 on third downs. I think 2 of them were just like running on like third and short and just saying, we're just going to get that yard right there. And I think one was a George Pickens pass. But I think there's a lot going on with this offense right now. And some of it does stem from Arthur Smith and, calling plays to develop the identity of this team, because I said going into this game, they need to open it up early, let Justin Fields throw the ball around a bit to back off the defense from the run, and then allow Najee to get cooking after that, because Steelers offensive line isn't blocking overloaded defensive lines anytime soon right now with the way that they're playing. So with that, I think that was part of the plan. I think that was like they came out, they had the deep shot to Hayward, they tried some things here and there, but they need certain things that are consistent in their repertoire. Certain ways of going about things and finding ways to attack different parts of the field. Like, hey, we run this concept, we're gonna get a choice for Justin Fields to go high or low, and it's up to him to make the right call in that situation based off of these keys that we're reading. And I just feel like that didn't happen enough in this game. It's tough for me to say without the all 22 because I haven't, when I'm at the game, oftentimes in the press box, especially for a lot this game because I was watching the trenches a lot, I use my binoculars. So sometimes I'm not seeing the whole play. I'm looking at a specific player, 2 players, 3 players, 4 players, like a certain grouping of people just to see how they're responding or how they're playing specifically. So I get a better look, from my eyes in the press box. And that's definitely what happened on a few plays in this game. But when I look at how the Steelers offense played in this game, I mean, again, just not enough when you need this when you need to score points, when you need to buy your defense time. And I think a big part of this comes back to being the team that the Steelers wanted to be. You go back to how they played in their other 3 wins this year when it came to when it came to possessing the football, they were crushing time of possession. In this game, they lost time of possession. In fact, I think this is the first time they've lost time of possession all year. 32-29 for the Colts, or the Cowboys, to 27-31 for the Steelers. And even with all that, the Steelers defense still got you 3 turnovers. They still were able to get it. And it's just, I think it is I think that when you look at this game, you can hang the hat on the defense if you want, but ultimately, I think that the defense, when you give up 20 points, you create 3 turnovers, you expect to win those games. The Steelers just didn't in this one, and that's a tough pill to swallow for your Steelers team. But now I think again it comes back to the identity question that we're talking about with Justin Fields, because I think that they want to be a ground and pound team, but I think they're seeing that that's not in the cards right now. At least while this offensive line's still coming together. So what can they be is a big question. And one that we'll continue to explore here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about this George Pickens situation because he got 21 snaps in this game. I think was the final total. And that's bizarre considering they had a lot more plays than that. We'll do that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, what reminds you this show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. You've heard all summer long about all the deals that the FanDuel offers, and there's more coming your way. Before we get to the deals, though, we got to start with the opening lines for the Steelers this weekend against the Raiders. The Steelers are 3-point road favorites against the Raiders with their money line at -164 and the Raiders money line at +138, and the over/under set at 36.5 points. That's a lot. That's a lot more like it when you look at schedules. But you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel today. Betting on the over/under seems to be a good way to do so with Steelers games. You can start betting right now, and you can get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet today with FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. That's $200 of free bets to new customers when you bet just $5 only on FanDuel.com. So just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We're going to take a step back from bigger picture here and look on a very specific picture, and that is George Pickens. And a lot of people were asking us after the game, why was George Pickens only out there for 21 snaps? And the same thing sort of happened against the Colts as far as limiting his snaps here. And I'm going to read through. I wasn't there for Tomlin. Again, it's a lot of these interviews all happen at the same time. So when someone doesn't have it, you hope someone else does. Thankfully, Brooke did. Brooke Pryor. So let's just read through how this came about with Mike Tomlin and his explanation of the situation. The question says, George Pickens wasn't one of your higher snap players on offense, there was a whole series where he was on the bench in the second half. What went into that? Mike Tomlin says we just wanted to kind of minimize his reps in an effort to get more productivity. We're just trying to manage in terms of the totality of the big picture. He wasn't less of a focal point in terms of our intentions of what we wanted to do offensively, but we did want to cut his reps a little bit in an effort to get higher quality play just in general. I'm sorry, my BS-ometer is flying crazy right now. It's ringing all sorts of alarms in my head, and I think that's Mike Tomlin covering for they're punishing George because he's not showing the right the right kind of energy, or they're taking him out because he's just refusing to run block, and that's just tough. I look at this situation and I think, man, maybe George Pickens, we had talked about, earlier in the season, like maybe, and even in the off season, maybe he's growing up, maybe he's learning how to, hold himself accountable. Then you see stuff like this, and you're like, this could be this could be something that there's something going on in the background. And there was something else that kind of tipped off that was a possibility, and it was Pat Freiermuth's scrum that he had in the Steelers locker room also after the game. Pat Freiermuth, and this is from a Brian Batko post. Go check out my buddy Brian Batko. He's a great dude covering the Steelers for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Brian Batko posted this video where Pat Freiermuth said, quote, "I trust the coaching staff and what they're doing. Everyone can be and complain." When I say be, you know which B word I'm meaning there. Everyone can be and complain about a lack of targets, but it's the stuff that you do without the ball. That's what leaders do. That's what good teammates do. I blocked my butt off regardless. Only he didn't say but. He only didn't say but. But in all seriousness, I think that Pat Freiermuth represents like what they want for the future, and George Pickens, talent-wise, you want it, but there's been some obvious issues the Steelers have been going through with George over the years. You thought it was better this year, and I do think that there's some questions there, because if Pat Freiermuth is speaking about anyone specific about being upset about how many times they're getting targeted, you're gonna assume that means George Pickens, because he's the number one receiver and supposed to be the guy that gets them out of jams. But to me, this is a part of what Mike Tomlin has to decide on at some point. He has to figure out a way to get through to George Pickens or cut their losses and get something for him in the future, because you want to have superstar talent, and he has the superstar talent. But as far as as far as how this offense is going to move, you don't need distractions like that. You don't need people wondering like that. And I think that's where the George Pickens situation could run itself off the rails and run the Steelers off the rails if they're not careful. But in all seriousness, just going over how I feel about this game and how the Steelers missed a golden opportunity here to win this one. I think they tired out their defense too fast with their offense. I think that there's definitely a George Pickens problem going on, as much as Mike Tomlin doesn't want to let that on. And I think that there's going to be a lot more information that comes out about this team really soon, just about how they see the future when it comes to building the roster, what they need to add. I think the call for a wide receiver 2 is going to be even louder. I also think there's going to be external calls for Russell Wilson to start to take over. I don't think it's going to be happening internally. I think that Justin Fields will keep his job, but I do think he should be on watch, because I do think that they will throw Russell Wilson in there if it gets too nasty for Justin Fields to handle in a game. So I think there's a lot of different things you could talk about there. But to me, the bottom line is that the Steelers don't know their identity on offense. They're making too many mental mistakes on defense, and a lot of times it seems to be new guy / rookie. So that could be part of the part of the issue there. So all that to say, I think the Steelers, this could be a bigger problem if they let it be. Last year, I think after the whole didn't block in the Colts game thing, George Pickens got a lane for. He took it to heart. He got better, and that was a good sign for him being able to handle that situation. But George Pickens has to handle this situation, and he's not getting a lot of targets, and that's part of the business. It's part of what you deal with in this game. I mean, at the end of the day, he had 7 targets, caught 3 of them, and that's the other part of this. George Pickens let at least 1 pass slip through his hand. Might have let 2. So I think that there's questions, but if they're left unchecked, I think that they're gonna be. I think it could define the season. But again, it goes back to having an identity, believing in, believing in that identity. And as Pat Freiermuth says, like, hey, like, my job's not to worry about the play calls, it's just to go out and execute it. And I think they have a plan that can be a good plan. It's just about getting it done. But we'll have a lot more to say about this game once I do some all 22 film, and it's not 4:30 in the morning now as I'm recording this. Thank you all for tuning into the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every Monday through Friday on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Back tomorrow with more on your Pittsburgh Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.